Hello, friends. My name is Benjamin. Today, I want to tell you another heartbreaking story that will not leave you indifferent. It's a story about a girl who was a role model. That girl is the star of the school. Beautiful, smart, and talented. Wonderful parents, excellent studies, many friends, and other delights of life. Nothing could be better than that. She and her relatives were sure that she had a brilliant career and a great life ahead of her. These were the associations that people had when they saw Natalee Ann Holloway. Natalee was born on October 21st, 1986, in the large city of Memphis, Tennessee, in the family of Dave and Elizabeth Beth Holloway. Her parents divorced in 1993, and she and her younger brother Matthew were raised by their mother. After 7 years of divorce from Natalee's father in 2000, Beth got married for the second time to a man named George Twitty, a famous businessman from Alabama. After the wedding, Beth and Natalee moved with their new family to Mountain Brook, Alabama. In Alabama, Natalee's life was going well. She attended Mountain Brook High School, located in a wealthy suburb of Birmingham, was an honors student, and dreamed of attending the University of Alabama to become a doctor. Natalee was a star student and was active in the social life of the school as well. She was a member of school government and the National Honor Society. She was also on the dance team and was a counselor in a group that helped students who were falling behind. Natalee decided to definitely go to medical school on a full scholarship. Becoming a doctor and helping the community was her desire. After all, she was a compassionate and kind girl. She never forgot about her family. She always shared her grandiose plans for the future with her nearest and dearest. And further, in the life of Natalee, as in the life of any person, there is a turn of events. She finally graduates from high school. At the end of May 2005, Natalee and the other graduates of the school are supposed to go on a 5-day trip to Aruba, an island in the southern Caribbean Sea that is officially part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Natalee, like her other graduating friends, decides to celebrate the end of school. After all, it is very important for every graduate to say goodbye to childhood and officially become an adult, and to relax before university and student life. At first, Natalee's father, Dave Holloway, was adamantly opposed to his daughter going to Aruba, but eventually gave his consent. Natalee's father knew that she was exceptionally responsible and hardworking, and therefore deserved to have fun with her friends before their paths parted. Natalee's half-brother, her stepfather's son, visited Aruba in 2003 and was generally pleased with the trip. He only warned his sister about Carlos Charlie's nightclub, where local men like to hook up with visiting girls. On Thursday, May 26, 2005, Beth dropped Natalee off at her friend's house at 4 a.m. and promised to meet her at the airport the following Monday evening, May 30th. The group, consisting of 124 fellow graduates of Mountain Brook High School and 7 adult chaperones, arrived in Aruba and checked into the Holiday Inn, near the northern tip of the island. Natalee and her friends enjoyed the touristy island. Exams were passed, school was over. They could afford to relax. The days flew by. The guys spent the whole day sunbathing on the beach, and in the evenings they went to the local bars. The last night on the island becomes the day when everyone saw the beautiful Natalee, for she and her friends had no idea what would happen next. Before leaving, Natalee and a few friends spent the night at the Excelsior Casino Club, which was located inside their hotel. At one point, the teens were joined by a 17-year-old guy named Joran van der Sloot, who was born in the Netherlands in 1987, and he and his family moved to Aruba 3 years later. Natalee's friend later recalled that Joran looked like a tall, handsome, smiling. She had seen him near the blackjack table, but she couldn't remember if he had spoken to Natalee at that moment. Later that night, the guys went to Carlos Charlie's bar and invited Joran to join them. The establishment was closing at 1 a.m. As all the customers headed for the exit, there was chaos in front of the bar. Some were calling friends, some were calling a cab or waiting for a shuttle to the hotel, and some were even leaving on foot. Several of Natalee's classmates saw the girl leave the bar with Joran and two of his friends, then get into a Honda Civic with them and disappear. The next morning, Monday, May 30th, 2005, all the graduates had to go to the airport to fly home. A couple of Natalee's high school friends noticed her absence, but were not concerned, assuming the girl had overslept. Natalee was a very responsible girl, and even then, one could have suspected that something strange was going on. But at that moment, no one paid attention to it. Natalee's friends said that they didn't suspect anything about her absence. They were only worried about Natalee's mom, who might have been upset that her daughter had missed her flight. Meanwhile, Beth spent the weekend at the beach in Hot Springs with two other moms whose kids, like Natalee, were in Aruba. That Monday, they all headed home together, ready to return to their parenting duties. Around 11 a.m., Beth called Jody Bierman, one of the 7 chaperones who had traveled with the graduates to Aruba. Jody explained that no one had seen Natalee since last night, and she hadn't come out into the hotel lobby when all the other guys were getting ready to leave. A mother's heart told Beth that something terrible had happened to her daughter, and as it was later revealed, the mother's heart felt right. Instead of panicking and throwing a tantrum, Beth pulled herself together and set a goal to find her daughter. She picked up the phone and first called 911 to inform the dispatcher that her daughter had been kidnapped in Aruba. She then dialed the number of her husband, Natalee's stepfather, and told him the situation. By the time Beth reached Birmingham, a family friend had already arranged a private jet to take her and George to Aruba. At 10 p.m., Beth, with her husband and a couple of their mutual friends, landed at Queen Beatrix International Airport in Aruba. Beth thought her daughter was a very smart and responsible girl, but also incredibly naive. Despite being smart and responsible, Natalee was still a child who had just graduated from high school and not out into this cruel world. She knew that the nightlife of the tourist island was a whole new environment for Natalee, who had never consumed alcohol or dated guys before. Meanwhile, Dave Holloway received the devastating news of his daughter's disappearance and traveled to Aruba as well. Upon arrival, the whole group headed to the northwestern part of the island, where numerous hotels and entertainment venues were dotted along the beach. The first point at which the investigation began was the Holiday Inn. There had been no news of Natalee's whereabouts. She had not returned to the hotel the night she disappeared, and her luggage and passport were in her room, already prepared for the morning flight to Alabama. When Beth took one of the hotel staff aside and described Joran, the girl immediately realized who she was talking about and said, "He tends to prey on young women." Beth had a description of Joran's appearance thanks to Natalee's friends and classmates, who remembered well the guy who had been hitting on her throughout the evening. From the hotel, the missing girl's family went to an establishment called Carlos Charlie's, where they began asking questions and showing the staff a picture of Natalee. Unfortunately, no one recognized the blonde beauty. However, Charles Cruz, a wealthy Aruba resident and owner of a cell phone rental company, joined the search for Natalee. The group split up. One part headed to the beach to canvass passers-by who might have spotted Natalee the night she disappeared. The other, including Beth and George, went to the casino, where they watched all the security footage and memorized Joran's appearance: tall, short, dark hair, and a pimply face. Charles Cruz drove to a lighthouse on the north of the island, where teenagers usually gathered, and learned that Joran and two of his friends had volunteered to give Natalee a ride to the hotel that night. Aruba police informed Natalee's family that she could not be considered missing until 48 hours had passed since her disappearance. Nevertheless, Natalee's family, accompanied by 2 police officers, went to Joran's house to talk to him. At first, Joran denied any connection to Natalee, but eventually spoke up. He said he met Natalee at the Holiday Inn casino on Sunday afternoon. In the evening, the alumni invited him to join them for a party at Carlos Charlie's bar, but Joran declined, and instead went to grab a bite to eat at a local fast food joint. Shortly before 11 p.m., Joran's father picked him up from the restaurant and drove his son home. However, upon returning home, Yoran changed his mind and called his friend Deepak Kalpo, who had come to pick up Yoran, along with his younger brother Sadish. On the night of May 30th, Yoran met Natalee at a bar and claimed that the girl was behaving provocatively and overly seductive. When the establishment closed, Natalee asked Yoran for a ride to her hotel, and they left together in a silver Honda belonging to Deepak Kalpo. According to him, Natalee was heavily intoxicated, and during the ride there was sexual contact between the two. Around 2 a.m., the young men stopped at the entrance to the Holiday Inn and drove Natalee to the main entrance of the building. Yoran reported that as she was getting out of the car, Natalee tripped, fell, and hit her head. She was helped up by 2 hotel security guards, with whom Vander Sloot left the girl. According to him, that was the last time he saw Natalee. 4 days after Natalee's disappearance, her family managed to review the CCTV footage from the Holiday Inn lobby, and no one was surprised to find that Yoran's version of the story was completely untrue. Natalee had not returned to the hotel, and no security guards had seen her. Offering his help, local businessman Charles Cruz tried to talk to Yoran again and asked if the young man had told the whole truth about the night Natalee disappeared. At first, Yoran tried to avoid answering, but then he said that Natalee had wanted to see the island and had refused to go to the hotel immediately after the company left the bar. Immediately after the company did leave the bar, he called Natalee crazy and claimed that she had given him oral caresses while in the back seat of the car during the trip. Then the company stopped at the lighthouse, but no one got out of the car. The version wasn't too much different from the first, and it was false too, because lighthouse security hadn't seen any cars enter the grounds the night of Natalee's disappearance. A third version was voiced by Yoran in his March 1st, 2006 interview. According to the new theory, on May 29, 2005, Yoran went to the Excelsior Casino for a free poker tournament, after which he sat down at a blackjack table and did not even pay attention to Natalee. She herself allegedly stalked Yoran as he made his way to Carlos Charlie's. In this version, Natalee had been drinking, but not too much. She was quite aware of her actions and voluntarily left the club after it closed. Yoran and Natalee were sitting in the back seat of the car. Deepak was driving, and Sadish was in the front passenger seat. Natalee was telling her future plans. They held hands and kissed throughout the ride. Yoran said that he was eager to have sexual relations with Natalee, but their conversation had no intimate overtones, and he didn't expect it to go any further than kissing. When Deepak stopped the car at Yoran's house, she suddenly said that she wanted to visit the beach and see the sharks. Yoran laughed and said that there were no sharks, but he asked Deepak to take them to the beach. Deepak stopped the car on the beach 5 minutes away from Yoran's home, near the Marriott Hotel. According to Yoran, he and Natalee were having a great time walking along the beach, holding hands and kissing. He was still hoping to sleep with Natalee, but then realized he forgot his birth control at home, so he didn't get to do it. The couple took a walk to the lighthouse and back. The whole evening was drenched in romance, and Yoran claimed that there were sparks of love between him and Natalee. After the walk, Natalee asked Yoran to stay with her to look at the stars and hang out, but he refused, citing that he had to get up early for school in the morning. Yoran called Deepak and asked him to pick him up from the beach, but he said he was busy, sending his younger brother Sadish to pick up Yoran. He claimed that they left Natalee alone on the beach and did not even bother to say goodbye to her, even though they realized that such an act was not the right thing to do. Around 3:30 a.m., Sadish dropped Yoran off at his house, and that was the end of the story. He insisted that he had no idea what had happened to Natalee, and only learned of her disappearance after his father called and spoke to the missing person's parents. For the next 2 weeks after Natalee's disappearance, her family continued to search the island. Missing person posters were put up all over Aruba. Natalee's stepfather went to a Dutch military base for help. George reported his stepdaughter's disappearance, and Marines joined the search for Natalee, using helicopters and four-wheel drive vehicles to search even the hard-to-reach places on the island. The Minister of Justice gave all Aruba government employees the day off to assist in the search, but no one has been able to find a single trace of Natalee. Even though the local police remained in contact with Joran and the Kalpoe brothers, the case did not move forward. The young men blamed the security guards for allegedly taking Natalee into the hotel lobby, and on their tip-off, 2 men working in a neighboring building were arrested. However, the detainees were soon released, as no evidence other than the testimony of the 3 teenagers against them was found. Natalee's mother began to realize that the case of her daughter's disappearance was being tried to be hushed up. Paulus van der Sloot, Joran's father, was a petty official in Aruba's Ministry of Justice. Natalee's family felt that the island authorities were biased against the van der Sloot family, well known among locals. Meanwhile, Dave Holloway was also actively searching for his daughter. When he spoke to local law enforcement officials, all he heard in their voices was disdain and the belief that Natalee had simply overdrunk and consumed too many illegal substances. According to the local authorities, she was supposed to return as soon as she had cleared herself of all the substances she had taken. Except Dave knew that Natalee was different and felt that his daughter was no longer alive, but nevertheless remained determined to find her body and bring it home. Since most tourists come to Aruba from the United States, the island government was under a lot of pressure, and on June 9, 2005, Joran and the Kalpoe brothers were arrested. Police failed to follow through with the hymn, confessions, and consequently, Joran came up with a new story, according to which Deepak and Sadish dropped him and Natalee off on the beach near the Marriott Hotel. She was so drunk that she occasionally passed out, so Joran left her on the beach and walked home. The Kalpoe brothers confirmed the new story. On July 4, 2005, the brothers were released from custody, and Joran remained within the prison walls for another 60 days. Natalee's mother and stepfather were frustrated and devastated by the inaction of the police, so they decided to hire a private investigator, and with his help, they managed to conduct numerous excavations and use infrared photography to help find the grave in which Natalee was buried. But all efforts were in vain. Beth and George stayed in Aruba for the entire summer. Things got even more confusing from there. Joran kept changing his testimony, and no one could influence him to tell the truth. During one of the services dedicated to Natalee's memory, the van der Sloot couple invited Beth to their home for a conversation. Anita and Paulus, Joran's parents, admitted that their son was causing too many problems. He had seen a psychiatrist because of his passion for gambling, and his parents were no longer able to control him. Joran often behaved defiantly and aggressively, which began to seriously worry Anita and Paulus. When it came to the night Natalee had disappeared, Beth noticed that Paulus was getting nervous and sweating too much. It was then that she realized that his father knew exactly what had happened to her daughter on the night of May 30th. On August 26, 2005, the Kalpoe brothers were arrested again without any explanation. It soon became clear that the police had received a statement from Joran, who claimed that Natalee had fainted several times while he was fondling her in intimate places, which, according to Dutch law, can be considered non-consensual sexual intercourse. Anyone who was present nearby at the time of the crime could have been considered an accomplice. On August 31st, Joran van der Sloot was released, and the Kalpoe brothers went free the next day. Joran spent almost 3 months behind bars, but never confessed to the murder. And the investigation had no body, no proof of the murder, and no other evidence of any kind. In September, Joran and his father left for the Netherlands and he went to college. Natalee's mother and stepfather returned to Alabama. But then, Beth flew to Aruba again. She wanted to conduct a search for her daughter's body on the northern beaches, but island police refused to cooperate. Aruba detectives repeatedly questioned witnesses in an attempt to learn the true chronology of the events of that ill-fated evening. It was still unclear when Joran arrived home and how he got there. Joran himself claimed to have walked home, but investigators considered this unlikely. Also, north of the Marriott Hotel is the fisherman's cabin, which was broken into on the night of May 30th. The owner claimed that an unknown intruder stole machetes and a lobster trap. Investigators wondered if the perpetrator could have used the trap to dispose of Natalee's body. Authorities had no leads and no physical evidence or proof against Joran van der Sloot. Over the next few years, many scammers tried to profit from the grief of the family who had lost a child. But a breakthrough in this convoluted case came in March 2010 when Joran sent an email to John Kelly, the Twitty family's attorney. Joran was willing to reveal the whereabouts of Natalee's remains, but only if he received $25,000 up front and $225,000 for follow-up. John Kelly was willing to take the risk because if the information turned out to be true, Beth would bury her daughter. And if it turned out to be false, Joran's action could be considered extortion. The lawyer traveled to Aruba on Easter Sunday and met with Joran without warning his clients. John talked to Joran in a hotel room for 2 hours, but when Joran realized that the lawyer had not brought any money with him, he became furious. Back in the US, Kelly contacted the FBI and urged them to launch an investigation. He soon told Beth about his trip, and she made the decision to meet Joran. Beth set up a meeting with Joran in Aruba on May 10, 2010, and promised that John Kelly would bring the previously promised $25,000. During the conversation, Joran stated that he and Natalee were at the beach that night, and when he wanted to go home, the girl sat on the ground, became cranky, and asked him to stay. But at some point, he took Natalee in his arms, but she began to scream and resist. He threw Natalee to the ground, but did not notice a rock on the sand below, on which Natalee hit her head, dying on the spot. Joran claimed that his father had helped him get rid of the body by hiding Natalee's remains in the foundation of a house under construction. By the time Joran started extorting money from the missing girl's family, his father was already dead. A week after the meeting, Joran sent John Kelly a letter from Peru, telling him that the whole story was a lie, but Kelly already knew it. After all, the house that Goran indicated was built recently, and Natalee's body could not have been there. And while Joran could have been arrested for fraud, there was catastrophically little evidence to build a case against him. On May 30th, 2010, 5 years after Natalee Holloway's disappearance, Joran met 21-year-old Stephanie Flores in the hotel casino. She was the daughter of a prominent businessman who was a former auto racer and political activist. On June 2nd, 2010, Stephanie's body was found in a hotel room registered to Joran van der Sloot. The hotel's security camera footage shows exactly how Joran entered the room with Stephanie. And later, Joran left the room alone. After completing the crime, he managed to escape to Chile, but soon he was arrested and sent back to Peru to face charges for Stephanie's murder. Joran admitted that he met Stephanie at a poker table when he was already drunk. They then went up to the hotel room and played online poker until a message popped up on the screen mentioning Joran's involvement in Natalee Holloway's disappearance. Stephanie went berserk, lunged at Joran, and punched him in the head. According to Joran's testimony, he hit her hard on the nose with his elbow and then blocked her breathing with his shirt for several minutes until the girl died. He then left the hotel and fled to Chile, where he was apprehended a few days later. On June 27, 2010, Joran was also indicted within the United States for fraud and extortion. On January 11, 2012, Joran pleaded guilty to the murder of Stephanie Flores. On January 13th, he was sentenced to 28 years in prison and ordered to pay $74,500 in restitution to the murdered girl's family. On January 12, 2012, 6.5 years after Natalee went missing, she was officially declared dead by an Alabama court. Shortly thereafter, Joran was sentenced to another 18 years in prison in Peru for smuggling illegal substances. On June 8, 2023, Joran was extradited from Peru to the United States. On June 9th, he was charged with extortion against Beth Twitty, mother of the late Natalee Holloway. He pleaded not guilty. On October 18, 2023, Joran provided authorities with a written confession to the murder of Natalee Holloway. He said he killed Natalee after she rejected his molestation. Joran hit her over the head with a heavy object before throwing his victim's body into the sea. After pleading guilty, He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He will serve this term in a correctional facility in Peru, consecutive to all other sentences. He only confessed to the murder as part of a plea bargain, but promised to provide complete, accurate, and truthful information about the night Natalee was killed. We can only hope that the main facts about Natalee's death will still be made public. Throughout this case, Joran van der Sloot has changed his testimony and lied so many times that even now the question is, did he tell the whole truth? But Natalee's parents, the community, and even the police realized that Joran was the guilty party. But he did not consider himself guilty and kept silent until the end, and only began to say it when it became convenient for him to use it. Natalee's parents, for all these 18 years, hoped to find their daughter's body and bury her with all honors. Despite being divorced for years, Beth and Dave worked together to bring the case to trial and bring Joran to justice. What do you think of today's story? Write your opinion about this case in the comments. I thank you for your attention and recommend subscribing to the channel as well as clicking on the bell to not miss new videos that are released daily. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.